it's interesting when you talk about the freshmen that are going to impact on this team, because there are a couple things here. One, this is such a deep and talented team that they don't really need a lot of guys to come in and play early, and that's a good problem to have, although a lot of those first-year guys want to get on the field early on. And secondly, frankly, there are no top 100 guys in this class. There are, it was ranked number 18th in the country, not bad by any means, but not quite up to the way Michigan wants to recruit, especially coming off of 2 straight Big Ten championships, and when they signed that class in December. But there's still a few guys that I think are going to see the field. So let's start with offense. Guys that are on offense, could be special teams, but who do you guys think is going to impact the most out of that freshman class?
Why don't you start, Clay, and give us what you think first, and then we'll pile on here and tell you how dumb you are or whatever. So,
hey,
joking as you know, yeah. Go ahead.
No, I got 2 guys, and they're both early enrollees. So again, this could change once fall camp comes around. We're gonna hear more buzz about some of these guys that enrolled June 1. And some of it'll be, hey, this guy's looking great, and then maybe we won't see him much. And some of it'll be, yeah, maybe that guy can impact early. But I'll start with Cole Cabana on the offensive side. I think that, Ben Hall, and Cole Cabana didn't play in the spring game. He had a minor injury. He's fully healthy now. But Ben Hall was kind of the talk of the spring game. At the same time, I think he's more of a traditional running back. And I think that with what Michigan has there, he's going to get the opportunity to kind of sit back, learn under Mike Hart, probably redshirt in my opinion. But Cole Cabana brings something a little bit different to the fold. CB, as you talked to Fred Jackson earlier this offseason, said he's already faster than Donovan Edwards. He can do a lot of similar things to Donovan Edwards. He can catch out of the backfield. He can catch out of the slot. I talked to Cole when we were down in Ohio. He said they're working him all over offensively, trying to get him the football. I don't think he's going to be featured by any means in this offense, but I would start with him. Probably also point to Fred Moore at wide receiver. And I talked to him last week, and man, he's an impressive kid. He's going to add some weight. Sounds like before the season wants to get up to 189 pounds. He's at 179 now. We saw some flashes from him in the spring game. So I'd go with those 2 skill position guys. There's a lot of guys coming back in the skill positions. A little easier to get on the field at those spots than, say, offensive line. But also another thing I think Cole can do is return kicks as well, and he wants that job. He talked about that as well, and I think that could be an option for them.
I think it's possible. I'm not sure that they would go with a true freshman in that role right off the bat when there are other guys that have been waiting their turn and that are capable as well. But if he's the best guy, then he's going to do it. Right. That's the thing. So, but I'm with you on Moore. I think this guy was probably the steal of the class and probably one of the most underrated in that 2023 class, not just at Michigan, but overall. And you guys can read about this in your football previews. Ron Bellamy talking about him, Michigan's receivers coach. Some really fantastic quotes from him. And we saw what he could do in the spring game, right? And I asked Ron, I said, was it limited to the spring game? He said, absolutely not. He said this kid was doing it all spring. So they still need a game breaker at that position. We thought it was going to be Darius Clemens or one of the trio of freaks, as Jim Harbaugh called them, Amorian Walker and Tyler Morris, I believe. So, but I don't think there's any question that at some point Moore is going to make an impact here, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if it's this year. So, along with him, yeah, I think Cabana and Hall might both redshirt, to be honest with you. We'll see what happens, but they both got a lot to learn. But they do love them both. I got to tell you, couple of guys there that they certainly think will be contributors down the road.
Yeah, you sift through this class and there's not that one guy where you're like, well, there's definitely a role for him somewhere. Obviously, I looked at the defensive guys the other day, and we'll talk about those guys here in a bit. And it's just the vast majority of guys in this class are probably either going to redshirt or you find a way to crack the field on special teams. And they don't, Jim Harbaugh has never hoarded red shirts. It's always been if you are able to affect the game on special teams. Doesn't matter if you're a graduate, doesn't matter if you're a transfer, doesn't matter if you're a 17-year-old freshman. He's going to find a way to get you on the field. So, the guys that you've mentioned so far obviously fit that bill. Someone I'm a little bit interested in seeing, just because Jim Harbaugh, he's a Jim Harbaugh favorite. Those are the kind of the guys that you have to circle as well. I know the tight end room is deep, but Zach Marshall is someone who Harbaugh compared to Rod Moore in that, he's a younger guy, has an extra year of quote unquote man growth ahead of him. as someone who has almost exclusively been a wide receiver, similar to Colston Loveland. And then you do some tight end things on film and get recruited a little more, learn how to block. That's something he's still working on doing. And I'm not making a one-to-one comparison to Colston Loveland. I think that there's a lot more development that needs to take place with a guy like Zach Marshall. But, he's someone that is already, he's got a full spring football underneath his belt. He's been, working with guys like Chris Jenkins and some of the veterans in his own position group room on, in the weight room and getting the playbook down and just a lot of those things you need to do to get on the field. And I could see, maybe not early on, but I could see him being someone that gets on the field in a special teams role. Or maybe we see him, in one of those games late in the year, maybe when Michigan has a big lead, you're kind of emptying the bench and getting some younger guys in there. It's hard to find guys in this class where you can go, gosh, there's a scenario where an injury here, injury there, he's on the field. Wide receiver, obviously there's a lot of snaps up for grabs there. Carmelo English is a guy that'll be here in fall camp that I believe is a little bit older for his age. So it's kind of the opposite of a Zach Marshall, but also someone that, you look at his film and, he's polished and he's someone that looks like he might be able to make an impact, in the slot for this team as well. So there are some guys there, usually in any given year, there's always a cluster of guys that sort of emerge and, are more ready than we thought they would be. But, overall, I'm not seeing a ton of that here, but I could see it with some of the guys that all of us have mentioned so far.
Yeah, and that's the thing with those two wide receivers. I would mention them too, Samaj Morgan and Carmelo English, who, they may not make the impact that Fred Moore will, and we'll see what Fred Moore's is. I mean, is it just what Darius Clemens did last year or Tyler Morris? Probably something similar to that, but could those guys make an impact on special teams or some on offense? We still don't know what Carmelo English is at this point, so I could see something like that. And to your point, AB, on if they can impact the game on special teams, I think you're absolutely right. So 11 guys last year burned their red shirt out of that freshman class. And I think if you asked a lot of fans, if Micah Pollard redshirted or not, they would probably say, yeah, he redshirted. We didn't see much of him, but he played in, I think, 11 games, all on special teams, some defense and mop-up duty at times. He's needed to add weight. He needs to develop, but they saw something in him on kickoff, at the very least. I know he was on kickoff, where, he can impact, and they really value special teams. So I think that's a good point. Moving over to the defensive side, I think we'll probably all pick the same guy as the number one impact guy, so we can talk about him first and then maybe some dark horses. But I believe it's got to be Jair Hill, who is very slender. Seeing him last week and speaking with him, he has a lot to learn, but he wants to come in and play right away. He said he wants to start 4 or 5 games as a freshman. He wants to do better than Will Johnson did last year. He's extremely motivated, and I think he's going to do everything he can to get up to speed. And Erdy was trying to do that during spring ball. Had an impressive spring game, had an interception that he wishes didn't get called back due to a penalty, but he's still able to flash something on that play. I think it's Jair Hill, and I think he could, maybe not 4 or 5 games, but not ruling that out, but I think he could start a couple games by the end of the season, depending on how that second cornerback spot shakes out.
I agree. He's got the confidence. You can see it. I like him. I like his game. I like the way he plays with a swagger. Does need to get a little bit stronger, but guess what? He's got a couple months to go, before he has to be out there on the field, or 6 weeks now, was it 7 weeks? I don't know. We're getting there, fellas. It's going fast. So, but I love his game. I liked what I saw from him in the spring game. He was much more polished than an Amorian Walker. And Jaden McBurrows, I think, is a guy that a lot of people are sleeping on. I think he might be some of the main competition for some of those snaps, but I don't think there's any question that this guy's got a bright future. And I think it was Jesse Minter, Michigan's defensive coordinator, who said, he might not be in that Will Johnson category just yet as a guy that's going to move up that much by the end of the year, but wouldn't surprise me at all if he was a starter or starting some games and playing significant football by the middle of the year.
Yeah, I like Jair Hill. I can't talk today. Jair Hill a lot. He's someone that I could see starting the season as maybe, second team, maybe third team. He's the one where you look at this class and you look at, the scholarship chart, you look at everything, how deep each of these rooms are. I think he's the one freshman in this class that has the chance to really sort of get himself out there and get some legitimate playing time, because we know, I mean, the cornerback situation are well plowed grounds right now. Now I know they like Cameron Calhoun a lot as well, another winter enrollee that had a good spring, and if I remember correctly, had a pretty good spring game as well. But I like that. Again, we've talked about this cornerback position a lot this offseason. To me, everything in that room are more question marks than they are concerns. Now, there might be you might take your lumps a little bit. Even Will Johnson. Will Johnson's never been a number one corner at this level before. So there's going to be growing pains that each of these guys go through. But Jair Hill, to me, is he seems like one of those guys that is a perfect fit, is cut from a little bit of a different cloth than maybe some other guys in his class. I would not be surprised at all to see him not only see the field this year, but make a couple big impact plays as well.
Definitely. I think if there's a freshman that has the best odds to start games, it would be Jair Hill by a mile. It depends on injury, whatever. Maybe at some other positions we could see it. And there could be a surprise, definitely, with some of these guys who just got on campus. In terms of a guy behind him on defense, there's not too many that I could see really playing a huge role on this defense or maybe even special teams. But I am intrigued by Etta at the defensive line spot, just kind of what he's going to bring. I know they have a solid, top 3-4 guys there, but I think after that, it's pretty open to maybe break into maybe not the 2 deep, but the 3 deep, and then he's versatile too. But defensively, anyone else that you guys could see playing somewhat of a role at this point?
Not really. I think that's about it. And Etta, I think, will probably see the field in some capacity, like you said. And but there are a lot of guys above him right now. You've got a ton of guys, edge rushers that can be difference makers. I think Josiah Stewart is a guy that comes to mind. So just wrote an article about him today on the site. But it's just one of those years, and there will be some surprises, guys. There always are. But I think really Hill's the one guy that you really point to and say, okay, given what we've seen from him already, we have a pretty good idea that he's going to play.
Yeah, I mentioned, Etta as a guy that, could find a role on the depth chart. I think that it's probably, maybe more of a special teams thing for him, but it seems like at some point the plan for him is probably going to be put on a little weight and kick him inside a la Chris Jenkins. So obviously he's got the gold standard for that already in the room to look up to. So we'll see what happens with him. Obviously he's the highest ranked signee in this class, but I just feel like these guys, these are a couple, both sides of the ball in this recruiting class have guys that outside of the Jair Hills or the Cole Cabanas or what have you, a lot of these guys are going to have to get ready and wait for their turn. Because I see the fruits of this class probably not, there might not be any fruit that this class bears, I should say, until a couple of years down the road. So, luckily for Michigan, I don't think it's a knock against any of those guys. I think when you look up their backgrounds, you look at what they bring to the table, I think that these are guys that can be very good football players in time. But it makes it makes what this program did in the transfer portal just that much more impressive. And maybe we don't have as many impact guys at the top of this freshman class, but we're going to bring in these guys that will have an impact on our roster this year, and then they'll be in and out of the program, and it makes way for the guys in the 24 class, which is much better. And I think has a lot of potential impact guys at the top, kind of clears the way for them to make their way next year. So, good on Michigan for how they were able to sort of offset a lack of impact. Because let's be honest, a lot of championship teams do have that from their freshmen, and I just don't see it as much with this group of guys this year.
Yeah, this class gets compared a decent amount to the 2019 class. And those guys helped Michigan win a Big Ten championship. Some of them multiple Big Ten championships. A lot of those guys didn't make, they weren't splash type of freshmen early on, but then they made huge impacts down the road. So that could be a similar mold for this class or not.